so I'm gonna do this review for y'all, but if you haven't seen this one yet, you should go watch it right now if you're into some classic spooky horror stuff, because the best way to watch this movie is knowing as little as possible. And I think anything I say whatsoever I would consider too much info for this. So I'm going to do the whole review, but perhaps you should go check this one out right now. Don't worry, I'll wait for you. Oh, welcome back. Anyway, y'all know me. It's Tars. This is the ASMR review show. And today's video, we're talking about Possession. Possession. 1981 movie from the Polish director Andrzej Zulawski. Again, always terrible with names, I am. This one stars Sam Neill and Isabel Adjani. So it's quite the multicultural production, because we got a Polish director with a Kiwi and French leads, and it's in Germany, where it takes place right against the backdrop of the Berlin Wall, you know, like the Suspiria remake. And this movie starts off kind of like a relationship drama that starts getting pretty more crazy and messed up until we get to some gory slasherness stuff, and some kills, and some weird Lovecraftian stuff, and monsters, and the end of the world, and a whole bunch of crazy stuff. So, this one, it's like meant to be about the two ends of a couple, right? Man and woman, Sam Neill and Isabel Adjani, and they're trying to essentially create the idealized version of their partner so that they can have that person instead of the one that currently exists. So, there's weird monsters and stuff in it, which is why I still got a nice kelp stout from Tofino Brewing. You know, weird tentacle monsters. Love that kind of stuff, right? You all might make the joke, you know, I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going, but in this case, you would be correct, actually. So, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's just start from the beginning. So, Sam Neill, I think his character's meant to be like a secret agent of some sorts, or like some kind of military intelligence person. And he's like back from a job. And so he's trying to rekindle his relationship with his wife and their son. But all is not well. And he soon learns that Isabel, sorry, that's not the actress name. His wife's been cheating on him. And the guy she's been cheating on him with is like, he's real weird, and he's into like some Zen Buddhist, we're all one mind mentality sort of thing. And he kind of reminds me like a very odd young Anthony Hopkins, which is interesting. This one, though, I don't think he's gonna eat anyone's liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. He's probably just gonna ask if you've tried transcendental meditation, but not the beyond the black rainbow, huge amounts of DMT kind of meditation. More like just, I don't know, have some herbal tea or something. And eventually we kind of find that the wife has been staying in this apartment, and there's some weird body horror shit going down, and anyone who goes into this apartment she's murdering, and then she's like forming this weird creature out of their flesh. It was like something straight out of Hellraiser, but this was before Hellraiser, So Hellraiser was inspired by this. Because that one, right, the wife in that, she's trying to lure men into the apartment so that they can be preyed upon by this creature, and their flesh will help it reconstruct into a fully formed person. And she's also like having sex with this thing. She's like, oh, he's tired. He made love to me all last night. And if the thought of that image is messed up enough, well, don't worry, the movie's actually going to show you how it looks later on. So you're going to see that in all its glory in a wonderfully grotesque scene. I actually reviewed this movie in one of my very first videos, back when my idea was that I was going to do frequent videos talking about all the movies I'd seen recently. We all know how well that ended up. Oops. I talked about it a little bit then. I had seen it, but it was maybe a couple months, though, after I'd seen it that I actually made that review. So, really, the only parts that I had remembered was all the creepy monster stuff. A lot of details that I had not remembered, which was nice, because now when I rewatched it, it felt like I could watch it again for the first time, or as close of a first viewing as I'm going to get to, having it not be the actual first viewing, if that makes sense. So that was very nice that it still felt fresh, and I picked up on a lot of details that I hadn't really noticed before, or at least themes and concepts that I hadn't really considered. Like, there's this whole religious element in the film that, like, Anna, she gets, like, possessed by evil. Not necessarily the devil or a demon, but just the concept of evil in this subway scene where she's just, like, screaming so much. Like, this is a loud movie. Make sure you don't watch it late at night if you're going to disturb your neighbors, or at least have a good pair of headphones, right? The chance of having a miscarriage in the subway, and then, like, now she's just possessed and is evil or something. Like, it's very, very weird, very odd. And this is, like, definitely this imagery of, like, this woman being succumbed to evil, and this man in this weird off-kilter relationship with a small boy as the son in the middle of all of it. I definitely think this was an inspiration for Lars von Trier's Antichrist. Some of the shots, it just feels like it's identical, and just even the way the characters look in Antichrist, they look like they were inspired by the look of the characters in Possession. So that's pretty cool. Lars von Trier films, might have to revisit some of them if I feel like just being depressed and sad about everything for a while, if I want to feel that way. I also feel like the subway scene ended up referenced in Irreversible. Less said about the imagery in that film, the better, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it's like kind of hard to describe about it, but just like, I don't know, the way it's shot, it's very odd and uncomfortable, and lots of close-ups and handheld cameras, and it feels very, documentary style, and acting's great. Like, again, Sam Neill, such a great underrated actor, and he's in another weird, spooky, Lovecraftian tentacle monster movie. I mean, I think me calling this one Lovecraftian is a bit of a stretch, though. Like, just because there's a tentacle monster doesn't automatically make it a Cthulhu movie or a Cthulhu reference, right? Like, I know there's more to it than that. But, it's like close enough, and there's weird frenzy, insanity, and like people seeing creatures and stuff makes them go all crazy in the head. And then this allows us to complete the Sam Neill Lovecraftian trilogy of Possession, In the Mouth of Madness, and Event Horizon. So, I'll say we'll accept it. And then there's this idea that this creature is like an old one or some kind of a god, because like everyone seems to be like caught up in frenzy when they look upon it. It's an interesting concept. There's actually some pretty good stunts in this movie, and I'm wondering, like, the way it was shot, if it was a stunt double or if it actually was Sam Neill, because you can pretty clearly see his face. So unless it was just my imagination, like, pretty impressive one where he has to like jump out of a moving car, and the other where he has to like fall off of a speeding motorcycle while the motorcycle crashes. Like, some pretty good stunts and stuff like that. I'm sure Tom Cruise would be proud. Eventually we see at the end that Sam Neill's kind of been caught up by the police because he's been leaving this trail of destruction while investigating his wife, and he kills what's his name, Heinrich or something like that, like her person that she was cheating on Sam Neill with, and so people are investigating him. It's also the same people that he worked for at the beginning, so he knows that kind of the end is coming. And then Anna eventually reveals that this weird monster has now finally consumed enough to like metamorphosize into an exact copy of Sam Neill, and therefore the idealized version of the husband has now been created and replaced. And as for Sam Neill, well, the teacher at the school that his son goes to, who I'm pretty sure is played by the same actress, just with different makeup and hair and contacts, she's now been replacing the wife. So at the end of the story, we have the replacement husband, the replacement wife, and the boy, the child, he somehow seems to know that it's all over, and so he just runs upstairs and drowns himself in the bathtub, all while these bombs and explosions are going off, and it's meant to be like the end of the world. And I think it's all like metaphorically, like allegorical, for the idea that his world is ending because both of his parents are gone. They've successfully replaced the other one with the idealized, perfected version, rather than accept the other for who they are. I mean, you could read a lot into the symbolism and imagery of this film, but I also feel that it's a little more straightforward in that it was simply born from a concept, from an idea, and the idea was that the director was going through a divorce, and so he kind of channeled this feelings into this idea of like, what if while divorcing you could basically find the perfect version of who you wanted in that relationship, but they were also trying to do that to you. And what if it involved some Hellraiser like body horror and like murder and gory effects and stuff like that? It's a classic idea, right? Now, I didn't confirm this after I watched the film, but I recognized the name like Carlos Rambaldi or Carlos Rambaldi, something like that, in the opening credits as doing the creature effects. And if memory serves correct, I recognize that name, and I'm pretty sure I recognize it as the special effects designer for the head effects for the xenomorph in Alien. So if so, that's a pretty cool connection, and it would make sense because Alien has lots of great creature effects, and Possession has a lot of great creature effects. In fact, I was very blown away by the first few shots where we get to see the creature up close, where it like has a body and like this elongated head with these weird eyes, and they're blinking. It's got these weird kind of outwardly pursed lips. Because, at the time I didn't know that this was going to have like weird body horror, gross monstrosities in it. I thought it was like oh, I don't know, there's a ghost and it possesses the wife, and then she jumps out of the closet and goes boo, and they slap her in the face with the book, and the ghost goes out, and happy ending. But that's quite far from what this movie is like. I mean, the title is about possession, as in, like, being possessed by evil, but I also kind of like the idea that the possession is not about, like, a ghost possession. It's more so about, like, possessing someone as, like, yours, as in that the wife is the husband's possession, the husband is the wife's possession, right? They want to have the other, not as another person, but as a possession, something they own and can do whatever they want with. That's at least how I kind of view the concept of the title. Overall, it's a very well shot film, especially for, like, this supposedly low budget looking Polish film. Like the imagery in it, the scenery, this whole, 80s Germany, Berlin Wall era. It's very similar to what they ended up using for the style of Suspiria remake, Suspiria 2018, so that's great, I like that. And it signifies this idea of this divide between two worlds, with, a literal wall being part of the film. So that's really great. Lots of great creature and practical effects, a lot of weird, creepy bloodiness, but just enough weirdness and oddness to make you go, what did I just watch? And then, make you want to delve into it and watch it again, right? So I really hope that, that you didn't watch this review until you saw the movie for yourself, or that you just, don't care, but I mean, perhaps that's a little worse. Because again, I went into this movie basically on a friend's recommendation. Like, he had heard, like, oh, this movie's good, and I said, oh, well, I have this movie, like, we can watch it. And we were just like, oh, sure, not knowing anything. And that's the best way to do it with this kind of a movie, that's for sure. I mean, like I said, I would like to look more into the themes and symbolism behind what it all means, but again, kind of in a David Lynch way, I think it just simply boils down to an idea and what you're supposed to feel from the images that you see. It's like in a David Lynch film, the most important thing is not what actually happens, but what you think you're supposed to feel from the scene. If a scene is supposed to scare you, then David Lynch will show you something scary. And, if he wanted you to feel elated and relieved and uplifted, then he'll show you something like that with angels and heavenly music, because that's the vibe you'll get. And I think it's a similar thing here in Possession. I'm not saying it's like a David Lynch ripoff or anything, but conceptually, a film is a moving picture, and about translating the images and words into this form of a medium to create an idea and translate it to an audience. Then I would think that that concept should be applied in viewing this movie as all metaphorical and allegorical. It's not about exactly what happens, because it's not literal. Like, I mean, she couldn't really, like, create a weird flesh monster by, like, killing a bunch of guys and having sex with it all day and keeping their skin in a fridge, right? Like, I'm male, or I don't know how everything else works. Like, maybe this is like a case of not knowing what goes on in the girls' locker room, or like some witchy stuff. I mean, maybe someone will have to help to explain that one to me. But I'm going to generally assume that's not normally how it works in divorce, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I view the film. It's not about what happens, it's about what's felt and what's observed. But ultimately, it's a pretty spooky, pretty creepy movie. Very good, classic one. Not very well known. Hopefully more people check this one out. I do think that for the audience the film has, that everyone does recognize it for its greatness. So here's hoping that greatness is recognized by more. Anyway, don't have too much else to say about this one. Just, wanna keep recommending you some good spooky movies for the season, that's for sure. Anyway, don't know what I've got planned coming up next, but we'll see what happens, and I'll see you when we get there. So, y'all have yourselves a good night, and I'll catch you next time.